Welcome, dear listeners. Tonight, let your thoughts drift gently as we take you on a peaceful journey. This is a space for calm, for quiet moments, and for the kind of stories that settle your heart and slow your breath. Make yourself comfortable, close your eyes if you wish, and allow the world to soften around you. Now, let's begin with tonight's story. Today's story is titled Wisteria Hollow, the Keeper's Awakening. Act 1, Return to Willowmere. The train pulled away from the station, a low hum echoing through the countryside as the last glimpse of the city vanished behind a wall of green. Eloan sat by the window, her fingertips brushing the cool glass, eyes tracing the patterns the sun left on the golden fields below. It had been years since she'd last visited Willowmere, the quiet village where her childhood summers once unfolded like dreamscapes. Now, older and wearied by the pace of city life, she longed for that slowness again, for the peace she remembered only in fragments. Her suitcase was light, mostly filled with books, notebooks, and a few faded photographs. She carried little, but it felt as though her heart weighed more than ever, laden with a nostalgia that tugged at the edges of her mind. Somewhere deep within, she hoped that returning to Willowmere would help her rediscover something she'd lost, not an object, but a feeling, a version of herself untouched by the noise and rush of adulthood. The train rumbled over an old bridge, the river below shimmering in the afternoon light. Eloan smiled faintly. She remembered this spot. As a child, she used to press her face against the glass, counting the seconds it took to cross, pretending the river was made of stardust. She whispered the count under her breath now, like a charm: 1, 2, 3, 4. The train slowed as it neared Willowmere Station, a small, ivy-clad structure with stone walls and a clock that always seemed to be a few minutes slow. It looked almost the same as it did all those years ago, except quieter. The platform was nearly empty, save for an old man in a brown cap reading a newspaper, and a black and white cat curled beneath the wooden bench, blinking lazily in the sun. As the train hissed to a stop, Eloan stepped down and inhaled deeply. The air smelled of rain from earlier that morning, of wildflowers, and something faintly metallic, perhaps the tracks or the old lanterns that lined the station's edge. Her boots made soft thuds on the worn cobblestones as she walked toward the village path, suitcase rolling behind her with a gentle squeak. The road to the cottage was just as winding as she remembered, cutting through rolling hills and past meadows flecked with buttercups. Bees floated lazily between blossoms. A pair of magpies darted overhead, their chatter breaking the silence. She passed a mossy stone wall with initials carved into it, some likely by children long grown. One of them looked familiar, though time had worn it down. Halfway through the path, she paused at a crooked wooden sign pointing right: Wisteria Hollow, 1 mile. That was it. The name of her great-aunt's cottage, nestled at the edge of the woods. Eloan's chest warmed with anticipation. Great-aunt Isolde had written her every year, long letters filled with dried petals and stories of the village. And though their visits had grown infrequent, the bond between them had never frayed. As Eloan approached the cottage, her steps slowed. There it stood, Wisteria Hollow, draped in flowering vines that reached toward the roof like curious fingers. The stones of the walls were a patchwork of age and care, the door painted a soft lavender that had faded under years of rain and sunlight. A row of clay pots brimmed with rosemary and thyme, their scents mixing in the air. The door creaked open before she could knock. "Eloan." A voice like rustling pages. There stood Isolde, her silver hair braided back, a shawl wrapped loosely around her shoulders. Her eyes, sharp as ever, softened at the sight of her grandniece. No words were needed. They embraced like two pieces of a puzzle finally fitting together. Inside, the cottage was filled with twilight warmth. Books lined the walls, stacked in haphazard piles, and the scent of cinnamon and beeswax filled the air. A kettle whistled gently in the kitchen. Eloan set her suitcase down and wandered to the window, looking out onto the backyard where a hammock swayed between two plum trees. "Do you still keep the fireflies in the jar?" she asked, half joking, half hoping. Isolde smiled. "You'll see tonight." As evening fell, the sky turned to watercolor brushes of indigo and rose stretching across the horizon. Eloan sat by the fire, a cup of rosehip tea in her hands, listening to the clock tick gently on the mantel. There were no sirens here, no notifications, no schedules. Just the wind, the fire, and the sound of her own breath slowing. Somewhere in the distance, an owl hooted. Eloan closed her eyes. She was home. Not just in a place, but in a moment that felt untouched by time. Willowmere hadn't changed much, but perhaps that was the magic of it. It waited quietly, patiently for people like her to remember how to be still. And so began her summer. Act 2, The Garden Between Dreams. The morning light filtered through lace curtains, casting delicate patterns across Eloan's face as she stirred awake. The bed at Wisteria Hollow was softer than she remembered, the kind that held you just a moment longer before letting you go. For the first time in months, she had slept soundly. No late-night emails, no city sirens, just the whisper of wind and the distant hoot of an owl fading into dawn. She stretched and stepped out onto the wooden floorboards, their creaks familiar like old lullabies. The scent of chamomile and baked apples wafted in from the kitchen below. Aunt Isolde, without fail, was already awake. Eloan padded downstairs in woolen socks and found her great-aunt humming softly, slicing fresh bread beside a bubbling pot of plum preserves. The table was already set with butter, wildflower honey, and 2 steaming mugs of something herbal and fragrant. "I let the lavender steep longer this time," Isolde said without turning. "I remembered it helped calm your nerves when you were small." Eloan smiled, heart warmed by the quiet memory. "It still does." After breakfast, Isolde handed her a woven basket and pointed to the back door. "The garden needs your touch. Things bloom brighter when you're near." Eloan laughed, unsure if her aunt meant it literally or as a compliment. Either way, she stepped out into the morning sun, basket in hand, and let the world embrace her. The garden was wilder than she remembered, but not in a neglected way. It was a riot of colors, scents, and textures. Lavender hummed with bees, foxglove swayed beside old stone paths, and the old fig tree bent protectively over a patch of golden marigolds. Butterflies danced between the blooms, their wings flickering like living stained glass. She knelt by a rosemary bush, brushing her fingers across its fragrant sprigs, then moved to a patch of mint. The garden, it seemed, had remembered her. Even the rusty old watering can was still there, sitting beside the crooked bench beneath the plum trees. As she worked, plucking herbs and cutting blossoms, Eloan's thoughts drifted. She remembered summer games with cousins who now lived halfway across the world. She remembered making potion tea from rose petals and dandelions, convinced they could cure anything from heartbreak to boredom. And she remembered the dream. Yes, the dream. Just before waking, she'd been walking through the garden, only it was different. The colors were too vivid, the sky a swirl of silver and violet. A narrow path had opened between two hedges, one she didn't recall being there. In the dream, she had followed it. Now, standing near the same spot, she blinked. The hedges had shifted slightly. There was no clear path, just overgrown vines and shadows, but still, something felt off. A breeze stirred the leaves, and a faint scent of jasmine drifted through, even though she hadn't seen any jasmine in bloom. Eloan. Isolde called from the kitchen window. Bring the lemon balm when you're done, will you? Coming. She answered, glancing once more toward the hedge. She returned to the cottage, handing over the lemon balm, and sat again by the window. The garden lay quiet under the rising sun, but the feeling hadn't passed. Later that day, Isolde gave her a book, an old leather-bound journal with pressed flowers between some of its pages. This belonged to your grandmother, she said gently. She used to write about the garden, too. Thought you might like to read it? Eloan opened to the first entry. The handwriting was delicate, slanted. One passage stood out. There are places in this garden that do not belong wholly to this world. When the mist falls just right and the wind turns from the east, listen. The path will find you. A small chill ran down her spine. That night, sleep came slower. As the moon rose above the wisteria-covered rooftop, Eloan lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the journal clutched in her hands. She wondered, was it only a dream? Or had Willowmere always held more than memories? Act 3, Whispers Beneath the Wisteria. The following morning arrived with a hush. Mist curled through the garden like soft fingers, weaving between branches and hanging in delicate threads from the wisteria vines above the porch. Eloan sat wrapped in a wool shawl, the journal resting on her lap, open to a page she hadn't yet read. Some say the hollow was once part of the old road, the one travelers used before the stone bridges were built. They spoke of a crossing hidden in the hedges, a place where thoughts became echoes and time twisted like ivy. I only found it once. And it found me again. Eloan ran her fingers across the ink. Her grandmother had always been a quiet woman, full of secrets tucked in teacups and glances, never speaking directly of the strange things she seemed to sense. Eloan had thought it imagination, once. Now she wasn't so sure. The garden outside the window shimmered faintly in the morning mist, not quite in the way sunlight played on dew, but something more subtle like memory lingering in the air. After breakfast, Eloan wandered outside again, drawn toward the hedge where she'd felt the strange presence the day before. Her boots crunched gently on gravel, birdsong echoing above her. The plum trees swayed slightly, though there was no wind. This time, she didn't hesitate. She stepped closer to the hedgerow. At first, nothing unusual appeared. But then just as she shifted her footing, the light bent strangely, and a space between the leaves darkened into a narrow, winding corridor. Not carved by hands, but grown that way, as though the plants had parted over time to form a tunnel no one spoke of. Her breath caught in her throat. Eloan. Isolde's voice floated through the air, distant and faint, as if behind a curtain. Eloan turned back, but the garden seemed further than before. She took a step forward into the hedge. The air cooled. The sound of birds dimmed, replaced by something softer like wind passing through pages, or whispers in forgotten languages. She kept walking, one cautious step after another. The tunnel twisted, light changing as she moved, blue shadows, dappled gold, flashes of silver like starlight caught in leaves. Then, abruptly, the path opened. Before her stood a small clearing. At its center, a stone bench covered in moss. Behind it, a fountain broken and dry, shaped like an old woman pouring water from a cracked jug. Around the clearing, dozens of tiny wind chimes hung from tree branches, all gently tinkling though the air was still. Eloan stepped closer, heart quickening. On the bench lay a book. Not just any book, it was bound in soft blue leather, embossed with a single symbol, a spiral of vines surrounding an eye. She touched it. The wind chimes stopped. A hush fell over the clearing, thick and expectant. When she opened the book, the pages were blank. All except the first. "You have returned." She gasped and dropped it, stumbling back. But the clearing held no menace, only mystery. She picked up the book again. The words had faded, as if they had only appeared for a moment. Eloan. This time the voice was clearer, closer. She turned, and the tunnel behind her was wide and open. She walked quickly back, not running but feeling as though she had been gone longer than she realized. Back in the garden, the mist had lifted. Isolde was at the porch, one hand on her hip. "You disappear like your grandmother. Always chasing the hedges." Eloan hesitated, then held up the blue book. "Do you know what this is?" Isolde's smile didn't reach her eyes. She stepped forward, gently taking the book from Eloan's hands. "It found you, then. You knew." Isolde looked at the cover for a long time. "I hoped it would wait a little longer." They said nothing else about it that day. But later, Eloan found the book placed on her pillow, its cover clean and cool. She didn't open it again, not yet. But that night, she dreamed of a path made of starlight and whispers rising from the earth. And when she awoke, a single phrase pulsed quietly in her thoughts. The garden remembers. Act 4, The Library of Things Forgotten. The rain returned the next morning, tapping gently against the windows as if the clouds themselves were knocking to be let in. Eloan awoke to the scent of warm cinnamon and wood smoke, and the steady hush of water slipping down the slanted roof tiles of Wisteria Hollow. It was the kind of day that made everything feel softer. The kind of day that asked for quiet. She descended the stairs slowly, still clutching the mysterious blue book in her arms. It had not changed overnight, still cold to the touch, still blank beyond that strange greeting. She had run her fingers across its cover more than once in the dark, wondering if something more would appear. Isolde, seated near the hearth, looked up from her embroidery as Eloan entered. "Storm's coming," she said casually, though her eyes flicked briefly to the book. "Best to keep indoors today." Eloan took the seat opposite, curling her legs beneath her and pulling a blanket over her lap. "Do you know what this is?" she asked again, more firmly now. Isolde hesitated, threading her needle through the cloth. "It's not a book, not really. It's a door." "To where?" "To memories that haven't happened yet." Eloan stared at her. "That makes no sense." "Neither does the way wisteria blooms every spring despite the frost." The silence that followed wasn't awkward, just full. Like there were things neither of them had the right words for yet. Later that day, Isolde led Eloan to a part of the cottage she hadn't seen in years. A hallway stretched longer than she remembered, lined with portraits of distant relatives and sun-faded landscapes. At the end was a narrow wooden door with a brass handle shaped like an acorn. "It's time you remembered more than stories," Isolde said, unlocking it with a key from around her neck. Inside was a room Eloan could only describe as impossibly large. It stretched far beyond the walls of the cottage, filled with bookshelves that reached the rafters. The ceiling was glass, though it should have been the roof, and above it swirled storm clouds, dark and alive, with glimmers of lightning flickering like thoughts too quick to catch. "What is this place?" Eloan breathed. Isolde smiled. "The Library of Things Forgotten. It only reveals itself during rain." Eloan stepped forward, her boots echoing softly on the wooden floor. Each shelf was labeled in a language she couldn't read, and every book seemed different, some stitched from velvet, others carved from stone or bark. She reached for a small red volume that pulsed faintly beneath her touch. "Careful," Isolde warned. "Some books bite." Eloan laughed nervously but pulled her hand back. They wandered in silence until they reached a low table at the center of the room. A fire danced in a small stone hearth nearby, and beside it, a stack of journals waited, tied together with twine. "These belong to your grandmother," Isolde said, sitting. She came here often. Not everyone can. Why me? Because the hollow chose you. Eloan sat slowly, letting the truth of that sentence settle. She opened the first journal and began to read. Her grandmother, it turned out, had seen much more than she'd ever told anyone. There were entries about the garden shifting its shape, of voices in the roots of trees, of a mirror beneath the pond that reflected not your face, but your fears. One entry stood out, marked with a dried violet. The blue book finds those who are meant to restore balance. When the hollow stirs, it means the path has begun to wake again. But not all paths lead forward. Some circle back. Eloan closed the journal slowly. Balance of what? Isolde folded her hands in her lap. Memory and forgetting. Life and dreaming. The hollow exists between. The room dimmed slightly, the storm outside growing louder. Lightning struck the glass ceiling, yet didn't shatter it. Instead, the bolt froze midair, suspended like crystal. Something in Eloan shifted then. A quiet realization bloomed in her chest. This wasn't just a nostalgic summer getaway. It was the beginning of something older, deeper. A reckoning, perhaps. Or a return. Later, as she wandered the shelves alone, the blue book pulsed faintly in her arms. She opened it once more, and this time, words bled onto the page like ink rising through cloth. There is a door beneath the roots of the fig tree. You must go before the moon wanes twice. She snapped the book shut, heart pounding. Outside the library window, rain fell faster. And somewhere in the garden, hidden beneath soil and stone, something ancient began to stir. Act 5, Beneath the Fig Tree. The sky held its breath the next morning. No wind stirred the branches. No birds called out their usual morning songs. It was as though the very air around Wisteria Hollow had quieted in reverence or in anticipation. Eloan awoke with the blue book still clutched to her chest. She had dreamt again, this time of walking barefoot through the fig grove in the garden. The moon had been high and pale, casting light that shimmered like water across the leaves. She had heard a voice in the roots calling her name. Not loudly, but like a memory trying to be remembered. Now, the morning sun filtered through the trees, casting dappled light onto the garden path. Eloan moved quickly, still in her slippers, her hair undone. She made her way to the fig tree that stood like a sentinel near the edge of the garden, a place she'd always passed but rarely visited. The tree was older than the others. Its trunk was twisted with time, and its roots broke the ground like old bones. She circled it once, then twice, unsure what she was even looking for. And then, on the third turn, she noticed a stone partially covered in moss, square, flat, and unnatural. She knelt and brushed away the moss. It was a trapdoor. Her breath caught. The message from the book echoed again in her mind. There is a door beneath the roots of the fig tree. You must go before the moon wanes twice. She hesitated only for a moment. Then, with effort, she pried the stone lid open. It groaned as it lifted, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. A faint smell of lavender and old paper drifted upward. Eloan retrieved a lantern from the shed nearby. Isolde had always kept several for emergencies and lit it with shaking hands. The glow was small, but it was enough. With the blue book pressed against her side, she descended the stairs. Each step echoed. The air grew cooler with every footfall, the silence deeper. It felt less like entering a basement and more like entering another time entirely. At the bottom, the stairs opened into a chamber carved from the earth itself. The walls were lined with roots, thick and winding, some of them pulsing faintly with light-like veins. Shelves had been built directly into the dirt, filled with artifacts, jars of moonstone dust, bottles of dried petals, coils of old ribbon, and stones etched with symbols that shimmered under the lantern's light. But at the center of the room was what stole her breath, a wooden door, freestanding, not attached to any wall. Its surface was smooth, polished, and carved with a spiral identical to the one on the blue book. Hanging from the handle was a single brass key. Eloan approached, her heart thudding. As her hand reached for the key, something inside the book stirred. She opened it. Another message had appeared. Memory must be offered. Only then will the path be made whole. She looked around the room, trying to understand. Memory. She whispered aloud. Then she saw the pedestal near the door, a shallow bowl carved from white stone, resting atop a column of roots. Slowly, Eloan sat. She closed her eyes. And she remembered. The first summer her parents left her with Isolde, when she'd cried for 3 nights straight until her aunt taught her the names of the stars. The time she fell and scraped her knee, and a red fox sat at the garden's edge, watching her, almost protectively. The secret tunnel she and her cousin Thorn had dug behind the tool shed, where they'd hidden their treasures: pine cones, marbles, and a single silver spoon. She thought of the day her grandmother died, how the world felt quieter, as if a song had ended. When she opened her eyes again, a soft glow filled the bowl. A silvery mist swirled inside her memories, distilled, made visible. The book in her hand shimmered and turned a page on its own. Now the door will know you. She stood. Slipped the key into the lock. And turned it. The door creaked open. What lay beyond was not darkness but starlight. A path of soft moss wound through trees that shimmered with silver leaves, beneath a sky that looked like the inside of a dream. Fireflies hovered, larger than they should be, each glowing with a hue Eloan didn't have words for. The air smelled of night-blooming flowers and the sharp, electric scent that follows a summer storm. She stepped through. It was not the garden. And yet it was. A different version. A memory woven into the hollow's bones, perhaps. For a world born from all the forgotten summers of every child who had ever passed through this land. As she walked, the path shifted beneath her feet, never quite straight, never quite circular. Shapes moved in the distance, some human, some not. She passed a tree that whispered her name, and another that wept petals as she neared. Eventually, she reached a small hill. Atop it was a mirror, tall, freestanding, its surface rippling like water. She saw herself but younger. 7 years old, barefoot, with dirt-streaked knees and hair full of twigs. Her younger self looked up and smiled. "I remember you," the girl said. Eloan could barely speak. "I thought I forgot." "You did," the girl answered. "But I didn't." The mirror rippled, and the girl stepped forward, merging with Eloan, not violently, but gently. Like rejoining a part of herself she hadn't known was missing. The book grew warm in her hands. One memory returned. 19 more remained. A bell chimed in the distance, soft, but clear. The sound of something beginning. Or perhaps, awakening. The garden was not just a garden. It was a keeper of stories. And hers had only just begun. Act 6, The Echo of the Hollow. The mirror's surface rippled, pulling Eloan deeper into the shimmering world. As the younger version of herself vanished into her body, an odd sense of completeness washed over her, but it was fleeting. A sense of being watched, of something else lurking just beyond her perception, settled uneasily in her chest. The path ahead shifted once more, winding through the strange, dreamlike landscape. The air hummed with a soft energy, almost like the earth was alive beneath her feet. Trees with silver leaves whispered as she passed, their branches stretching toward her like welcoming arms, only to retreat the moment she neared. The sky, once filled with starlight, had shifted to a deep twilight purple, dotted with glowing orbs that seemed to flicker in and out of existence. Eloan continued to walk, her steps quiet on the mossy ground, feeling the weight of the blue book pressing gently against her side. Her hand brushed the cover, and the words seemed to pulse once more. The garden watches. It listens. And it will not forget. The words were both a warning and a comfort, but they left her with more questions than answers. Why had the book found her? What was this place? And why did it feel as though the world was watching her every move? She took a deep breath, trying to push the unease away, and pressed on, following the winding path. The soft hum of the world around her filled her ears, and then, faintly, another sound entered the mix: whispers. Quiet, almost imperceptible, as though the very air was speaking to her. The whispers seemed to come from all directions, yet they never formed words, just a constant flow of sound that tugged at her consciousness. "Who's there?" She called out, her voice barely above a whisper, but the air seemed to stifle the sound, absorbing it. She walked faster, the whispers growing louder as she approached a clearing ahead. The mist seemed to swirl more thickly here, and the trees began to thin, leaving a wide open space. At the center of the clearing stood a stone pedestal, and upon it an object she immediately recognized. A key. Not just any key, but the very same one that had hung from the door she had just passed through. The brass key, shaped like a vine, its intricate details almost glowing in the dim light of the forest. It rested on the pedestal, waiting. Eloan stepped forward, her fingers almost trembling as she reached out to take it. The moment her hand made contact with the cool metal, the ground beneath her feet trembled. The whispers grew louder. Now, they were words. "You cannot leave." Eloan's breath hitched, her heart racing. She pulled her hand away from the key, but it was already too late. The stone pedestal cracked open, revealing a dark, swirling vortex beneath it. The mist thickened, and the air grew colder, the very atmosphere vibrating with a strange energy. Eloan backed away, her mind racing. She glanced around, but the path she had followed seemed to have vanished, swallowed by the encroaching fog. Her only choice was the vortex before her. The whispers seemed to mock her, filling her ears as the ground beneath her feet quaked. "You are not the first. You will not be the last." With a determined breath, Eloan stepped forward, letting herself fall into the vortex. The moment she did, the world around her dissolved into a blur of colors and shapes, blinding light, then deep darkness. She felt weightless, floating, as if she were no longer tied to the physical world. And then, just as suddenly, the world snapped back into focus. She was no longer in the dreamlike landscape of the hollow. Instead, she found herself standing in an entirely new place, dark, vast, and unsettling. A towering structure loomed in the distance, its silhouette black against a crimson sky. The ground beneath her feet was cracked and barren, and the wind carried with it the scent of dust and decay. The whispers were gone, but their presence lingered, pressing against her skin like an unseen weight. "Eloan," a voice called out. She spun around, her heart skipping a beat. The voice was familiar, but it couldn't be. She hadn't heard it in years. "Thorn," she whispered. A figure stepped out from the shadows, and Eloan's breath caught in her throat. It was her cousin, Thorn, the boy she had grown up with, the one who had disappeared without a trace years ago. His hair was longer now, his clothes torn, but it was unmistakably him. "Eloan," he repeated, his voice carrying an odd echo, as though it were coming from far away. "I told you to wait." "Thorn," Eloan breathed, taking a step toward him, but something stopped her. I thought you were gone." "What is this place?" He looked at her, his eyes distant, almost as though he wasn't really seeing her. "It's where we go when we're forgotten." Eloan's heart sank. "Forgotten?" Thorn nodded, his expression grim. "We've all been forgotten, Eloan. And this place, the hollow, it remembers. It remembers everything." She stared at him, confusion swirling in her chest. "But why are you here? What happened?" Thorn took a step forward, his figure flickering like a mirage. "You're here to finish what you started," he said softly. but be warned, some memories should never be recalled. As he spoke, the ground beneath Eloan began to shift. The crimson sky darkened, the wind picking up until it howled, tearing at her skin like shards of ice. Thorn's form flickered one last time, and then, with a sudden crash, he was gone. The whispers returned, louder now, echoing off the broken land. "You are the key." Eloan's heart pounded in her chest as she turned back toward the towering structure. She knew she had to move forward. There was no turning back now. And somewhere, deep inside, she knew that the Hollow's secrets were more than she was ready to face. But she was already too far in. Act 7, The Echoing Hall. Eloan stood frozen as the land around her shifted and rippled, the crimson sky darkening further. Thorn's sudden disappearance left her heart racing. What was happening? What did he mean by "we've all been forgotten"? The whispers had returned, but this time, they weren't just faint echoes in the wind. They were insistent, tugging at her thoughts, urging her forward. The towering structure loomed before her, its silhouette dark and ominous against the blood-red sky. It seemed to stretch endlessly into the distance, with jagged, broken walls that shimmered with an eerie light. The air felt heavy, like the weight of countless years pressing down on her shoulders. The ground beneath her was cracked and desolate, with not a single blade of grass to be seen. Despite the fear gnawing at her insides, Eloan knew she couldn't turn back now. The path had been set, and the Hollow had already begun to reveal its secrets. She had to go forward. For what? She wasn't entirely sure, but the Hollow, and the mysterious book, seemed to have a purpose for her, one she couldn't deny. With hesitant steps, Eloan moved toward the massive entrance of the structure. The door was ancient, made of dark iron, and covered in strange symbols she couldn't understand. As she approached, the door groaned, its surface warping and shifting like liquid metal. "Eloan," the whispers called again, this time louder, more urgent. The voice was indistinct, but it seemed to come from everywhere. "Come closer. It's time." Taking a deep breath, she reached out and touched the door. The moment her fingers made contact, the symbols flared to life, glowing with a bright, fiery light. She stepped back in shock as the door slowly began to open, revealing the interior beyond. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the smell of ancient stone. The hall stretched out before her like a vast cavern, its walls lined with forgotten artifacts, vases, sculptures, old weapons, and dusty books, each one holding a piece of history long buried. The ceiling arched high above, lost in shadow, and the sound of her footsteps echoed loudly in the emptiness. As she ventured deeper into the hall, Eloan couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching her. The whispers had quieted, but the air felt charged, as though the very space around her was alive. A low hum filled the room, barely audible, but constant, like the reverberation of ancient power. At the far end of the hall, she noticed a raised platform, upon which stood a massive, ornate mirror. It was framed with intricate carvings of vines and roots, much like the blue book she carried, and the mirror's surface shimmered with an unnatural glow. Eloan felt drawn to it, as if it were calling her name. She approached cautiously, each step echoing in the cavernous silence. As she drew closer, the air grew colder, and the light from the mirror intensified, bathing her in its otherworldly glow. Her reflection shimmered in the glass, but something was off. Her face looked the same, but her eyes were different. They were not her own. For a moment, Eloan froze, her heart racing. She leaned closer, and as she did, the reflection in the mirror began to change. The surface rippled, like water disturbed by a breeze, and slowly, the image of herself morphed into something else, something darker. A figure stood behind her, cloaked in shadow, its face obscured. The figure moved closer, its presence filling the mirror, and then, in a flash, it reached out, grabbing Eloan's arm. She gasped, stumbling back as the reflection grinned menacingly at her. "No!" She cried out, pulling her arm away, but the figure in the mirror didn't release its grip. It tugged her closer, its grip tightening, its eyes glowing with an unsettling light. The whispers returned, louder than ever, now speaking in unison. "You are the key, Eloan. You are the one who must open the gate." The mirror's surface cracked, sending splinters of light scattering in all directions. Eloan recoiled, her heart pounding as the room around her began to tremble. The figure in the mirror dissolved, but its voice lingered in her mind, echoing through the hall like a curse. "Open the gate. Find the door." Eloan backed away, the cracks in the mirror spreading like webs. The hall seemed to close in around her, the walls narrowing, the ceiling lowering. Panic surged in her chest as the whispers grew deafening. They weren't just voices, they were memories, her own, tangled with those of others. Faces she didn't recognize flashed before her eyes, their expressions full of fear and longing. Suddenly, a new voice broke through the chaos. "Eloan." It was Thorn's voice again, but this time, it was clear, real. She spun around, searching for him, but he was nowhere to be seen. "Eloan, you're not alone." Thorn's voice called again, more urgently now. "You've been chosen. But you have to trust yourself. The Hollow remembers everything, and you must unlock it." The hall began to distort, the walls warping like molten glass. The ground trembled, and Eloan realized she was standing at the edge of a great abyss. The whispers crescendoed, their voices now a cacophony, overlapping in maddening rhythms. Without thinking, she reached for the blue book, feeling its warmth in her hands. She opened it once more. "The key is within you. The gate is yours to unlock." As she read the words, a sharp, overwhelming feeling of recognition surged through her. The book, the mirror, the whispers, everything was connected. And the key, the one thing she had been searching for, had always been with her. With newfound resolve, Eloan took a step forward, her gaze fixed on the shifting doorway in the distance. The air around her began to pulse, the echoes of forgotten memories fading into the background. The hall was no longer closing in on her, it was opening, revealing a path forward. The whispers softened, their words now a gentle hum, as though the hollow itself had granted her passage. Eloan walked toward the door, feeling the weight of her destiny settle in her chest. She was no longer just a visitor to this strange world. She was part of it. She was the key. And as the door creaked open, revealing what lay beyond, she knew that whatever came next would change everything. Act 8, The Gatekeeper's Trial. Eloan stepped through the ancient doorway, the book still clutched tightly in her hands. The moment she crossed the threshold, the air seemed to change darker, colder, and heavier with the weight of time. She blinked, trying to adjust her eyes to the new light. The room she now found herself in was unlike anything she had ever seen before. It was vast, more vast than any room could be. Its walls stretched high above, far out of sight. The floor beneath her feet was made of polished black stone, slick and gleaming as if freshly oiled. In the center of the room stood a towering archway, framed by twisting vines and thorns. It pulsed with an ominous energy, the very air around it vibrating with anticipation. Above the arch, a symbol that looked almost like the one on the blue book, glowed faintly, casting a pale, ghostly light across the room. Eloan, a voice echoed through the chamber, deep and resonant, as if coming from the very walls themselves. You have arrived. She turned sharply, searching for the source of the voice, but found no one. Who's there? She called out, her voice steady, though her heart was racing in her chest. The voice answered again, this time more clearly. I am the gatekeeper. And you, Eloan, have been chosen to face the trial. Eloan's brow furrowed in confusion. Trial? What trial? The gatekeeper's voice echoed again, the words flowing through her like a stream of cold water. The hollow has awakened, and you are the key to its future. To unlock its true power, you must pass the trial. Only then can you restore what has been lost. A low, rumbling sound filled the room, and the archway ahead of her shifted. The vines seemed to writhe and twist, forming patterns she couldn't quite comprehend. The entire room seemed alive, pulsing with an eerie energy. The trial, the gatekeeper's voice continued, is not of strength or courage. It is of memory. You will face your own past, Eloan. You will confront the moments that have shaped you, and you must make a choice. Eloan took a step forward, her eyes wide. A choice. Yes, the voice answered. A choice between the past and the future. Between remembering what was and embracing what could be. The archway before her opened slowly, revealing a path that led into a swirling mist. Eloan hesitated for a moment, then, with a deep breath, stepped forward. As she entered the mist, the temperature dropped sharply. The fog swirled around her, thick and suffocating, making it hard to see more than a few steps ahead. She could hear the faint sound of whispers again, but they were different this time, familiar voices, ones she hadn't heard in years. Eloan, a voice called softly, and she turned quickly, her heart leaping into her throat. It was her mother. Eloan, come back. You don't have to do this. Her mother's face appeared in the mist, her expression full of concern. Eloan's throat tightened. She hadn't thought about her mother in so long, not since she had passed away, leaving behind an empty house and an even emptier heart. No, Eloan whispered, shaking her head. I need to do this. I have to understand. But the vision of her mother didn't fade. It remained, her eyes filled with both love and sorrow. Eloan, you have a choice. You can return to the life you knew. The life of comfort and safety. You can forget about this place, forget about the hollow. You don't have to face this trial. You don't have to change. Eloan felt a pang in her chest, the weight of her mother's words pressing against her. It would be so easy to go back, to forget all of this, to return to a life she understood. But something deep inside her resisted. She couldn't forget. Not now. I can't, she said firmly, her voice shaking with emotion. I have to find the truth. The vision of her mother flickered, fading away like mist in the wind. Then the trial will continue, the gatekeeper's voice echoed once more. Eloan moved forward, the mist parting as she walked. The path ahead twisted and turned, leading her through a series of strange visions. First, she found herself standing in a garden one she recognized. It was the same garden she had played in as a child, the same garden that had once been filled with laughter and warmth. But now, it was different. The flowers were wilted, the trees gnarled and twisted. And there, standing in the middle of the garden, was a younger version of herself. The girl looked lost, confused. She stared at Eloan with wide eyes, not understanding who she was. But Eloan knew. It was the part of herself she had buried, the part she had forgotten in her search for answers. The child who had run through the garden, carefree and innocent, before the weight of the world had set in. You left me, the child said softly, her voice barely a whisper. You promised you would never forget. Tears welled up in Eloan's eyes. She had left that part of herself behind, buried beneath the years of pain and loss. But it had never truly gone away. I'm sorry, Eloan whispered, stepping forward. I'm sorry I forgot. The child's eyes softened, and for a moment, Eloan could see the love and trust she had once held so freely. She knelt down, reaching out her hand, and the child took it. As their hands touched, the garden around them began to shift, the flowers blooming once more, the trees straightening. The world seemed to breathe again. But the moment was fleeting. The vision dissolved, and Eloan was back in the swirling mist, her heart heavy but somehow lighter at the same time. The gatekeeper's voice spoke again, this time softer, almost approving. You have passed the first part of the trial. But there is more to come, Eloan. You must face the past, and in doing so, Unlock the future. Eloan nodded, her resolve growing stronger. She didn't know what awaited her, but she knew one thing for sure, she wasn't going to turn back now. She had come too far. And the Hollow, with all its mysteries and secrets, had only just begun to reveal its true power. Act 9, The Veil of the Forgotten. The mist began to thin, and Eloan felt the weight of the trial pressing down on her. Every step forward felt like a burden, each one drawing her deeper into the unknown. The visions she had just witnessed, the garden, the child, the reflection of her mother linger in her mind, and yet, she knew that the trial was far from over. The whispers, once soft, now buzzed around her ears like an unrelenting swarm, pushing her to continue. The swirling mist began to dissipate entirely, revealing a new landscape, a vast field, bathed in soft, golden light. It was beautiful, almost unreal, like a painting come to life. The air was sweet, carrying the scent of blooming jasmine, and the grass beneath her feet felt soft, almost like velvet. But Eloan wasn't fooled. She had learned by now that beauty in the hollow often came with a price. At the center of the field stood a structure, a temple of sorts, but unlike anything she had ever seen. The walls were made of translucent stone, shimmering as if they were alive, breathing with the air around them. The temple was surrounded by a pool of water, its surface still and mirror-like, reflecting the temple's ethereal glow. For a moment, Eloan stood still, unsure of what to do. The whispers had stopped, leaving only the sound of her own breath and the occasional rustle of the grass. She felt drawn toward the temple, the blue book pulsing gently at her side, as if urging her to step forward. Eloan, a voice called out, faint but unmistakable. Her heart skipped. It was Thorn's voice again. She turned toward the direction of the sound, but there was no one in sight. The voice echoed once more. Eloan, you must come. The gate awaits. The words sent a chill down her spine. She had heard those words before. In the dream. In the garden. But now, they were different. More urgent. She had to make a choice. She knew that whatever lay beyond the temple would not be easy. Taking a deep breath, Eloan crossed the field toward the temple, the water beneath her feet rippling as if it were alive. The closer she got, the more the light shifted, becoming colder, sharper. By the time she reached the entrance, the golden hue had faded, replaced by an unnatural darkness that clung to the temple's walls. She reached for the entrance, the door appearing to open on its own as her hand drew near. The moment she stepped inside, the world shifted once more. Inside the temple was unlike anything she had seen before. The walls were covered in intricate carvings, each depicting scenes of what Eloan could only assume were past events, some familiar, some not. She saw images of the garden she had played in as a child, of Wisteria Hollow in its prime, and of figures standing in shadow, their faces obscured. But what caught her attention were the figures in the back of the temple, two tall statues, one of a woman, the other of a man. They stood side by side, their features carved in incredible detail. The woman was draped in flowing robes, her face serene, but her eyes were sharp, almost piercing. The man, standing next to her, had a darker expression, one of determination, his features carved with a sense of authority. At the base of the statues, beneath their feet, lay a stone plaque, worn with age. Eloan approached it cautiously, her fingers grazing the surface. The words were faded, but she could make them out. When the gate opens, the balance is tested. You must choose between the light and the dark, the past and the future. The air in the temple grew heavy as the words lingered in her mind. The balance. The choice. Eloan had heard the word balance many times since her arrival in the hollow, but it was becoming clear to her now that this balance was not something that could be easily restored. She stood there for a moment, her thoughts racing. The blue book pulsed again, a soft warmth emanating from its pages. She opened it once more, turning it to the next page. To restore the balance, the key must be given. The door lies within. The gatekeeper waits. Eloan's heart pounded. The gatekeeper, she had encountered the voice, but she had never actually seen the entity behind it. Now, she understood. The gatekeeper wasn't just a guide, it was a part of the hollow itself, tied to the land, to its secrets, and to the choices she had yet to make. A shadow moved in the corner of her eye, and Eloan spun around. There, standing in the center of the room, was Thorn, his figure flickering like a mirage. He stepped forward, his face solemn. "Eloan," he said, his voice softer now, almost pained. "You've come far. But this is where it ends. The trial has reached its final stage, and you must choose. You cannot do this alone." "But I'm not alone," Eloan replied, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "I have the book. I have you, your memory." Thorn shook his head. "It's not enough. The hollow remembers, but it also forgets. There's more to this than you know. More than the garden. More than the path." He stepped closer, his face flickering again. "The hollow needs a new keeper, Eloan. A guardian who will restore what has been lost, but that means giving up everything, your past, your future. You will become one with the hollow, and you will forget everything else." Eloan's breath caught in her throat. "Forget everything." Thorn nodded, his eyes full of sadness. "You must choose. The light or the dark. The past or the future. The gatekeeper can only open the way for you, but it is up to you to decide what you will become." The air in the temple seemed to hold its breath, the silence pressing in on her. Eloan looked around, the statues of the man and woman standing silent watch over her. The whispers returned, louder now, swirling around her, urging her to choose. Suddenly, the blue book in her hands began to glow, its pages flipping on their own, stopping at a passage she hadn't seen before. "The hollow does not belong to the keeper. It belongs to those who remember, those who dream. The choice is yours, Eloan. What will you choose? Act 10, The Gatekeeper's Choice. The temple's silence was deafening. Eloan's pulse raced as Thorn's image flickered before her, his words hanging heavily in the air like a weight she couldn't ignore. The moment felt frozen in time, every breath she took louder than the last. The blue book in her hands began to glow brighter, pulsing with a strange energy that seemed to answer the call of the whispers that still swirled around her. The choice was hers, past or future, light or dark. The hollow, with its countless secrets, was awaiting her decision. Thorn's face, now clearer than ever, seemed to shift again, flickering between a smile and something darker, something more sinister. Eloan, you have already come this far. You've walked through the garden, you've touched the mirror, and now you stand before the gate. But understand this, to restore the balance, to unlock what has been hidden, you must give yourself. You will become a part of the hollow. You will become its keeper. You will forget the life you knew. Her heart thudded painfully in her chest as she took a step back. The blue book pulsed again, its pages flipping, showing her visions of the garden, of the childhood she'd left behind, of Isolde's quiet cottage and her family memories she wasn't sure she was ready to lose. I don't want to forget, Eloan whispered, more to herself than to Thorn. I don't want to leave everything behind. Thorn's figure softened, his features becoming clearer. You won't leave everything behind, Eloan. You will remember. But you will carry the memories of the hollow within you. The garden, the forest, the ancient stones, it will all become part of you. You will become its heartbeat, its breath, its voice. Her fingers tightened around the blue book as the decision weighed heavier on her shoulders. A part of her wanted to refuse, to return to the life she had before, the simplicity of the garden, the comfort of Isolde's home. She longed for that normality, the safety of what was familiar. But another part of her, a part that had awakened in the hollow, felt a deep, burning desire to understand, to unlock the secrets hidden beneath the soil and in the very roots of this land. She looked at the towering statues of the man and the woman again, their faces carved with wisdom and sorrow. The same figures that had once been guardians of this place. The same figures that had watched over generations, waiting for the one who would come to restore the balance. You have to make your choice, Eloan, Thorn said gently, his voice now laced with an edge of urgency. Time is running out. With one last, lingering look at the statues, Eloan stepped forward, her heart heavy but determined. The glowing blue book, still warm in her hands, seemed to respond to her touch, its cover glowing brighter as she walked toward the archway that lay at the heart of the temple. The gate was still open, its darkness pulling her forward, as though it were calling to her. Eloan, Thorn's voice echoed behind her, this time softer, almost sorrowful. You were never meant to walk this path alone. But Eloan didn't turn back. She couldn't. Not anymore. She had already stepped into the hollow, and the hollow had already become a part of her. With a deep breath, Eloan crossed the threshold, feeling the air shift as she passed through the gate. A strange energy hummed around her, the very fabric of the hollow trembling as if acknowledging her decision. The world around her shifted again, this time not into a familiar place, but into something far more ancient, far more eternal. The ground beneath her feet was no longer stone but soft earth, warm and alive. The sky above her rippled with colors she couldn't describe, shades of gold, purple, and green dancing like the northern lights. All around her, the landscape seemed to breathe, the trees and the vines whispering in an ancient tongue she could almost understand. And there, standing before her, was a figure tall, cloaked in shadow, with eyes that glowed faintly in the dim light. It was the gatekeeper. "You have chosen," the gatekeeper said, their voice both soothing and unsettling. "You are the keeper now, Eloan. The balance is restored, but it will not be without cost." Eloan felt a rush of energy flood through her, the book in her hands vibrating with the pulse of the hollow's heartbeat. Her body trembled, and for a moment, it felt as though the very earth itself was pulling at her. She gripped the book tighter, the warmth of it seeping into her skin, anchoring her. "What do I do now?" she asked, her voice strained. "You must protect this place," the gatekeeper replied, stepping closer. "You must guard the memories and the secrets of the hollow. And you must guide those who come seeking answers." Eloan's mind raced. "And what happens to me?" The gatekeeper's eyes glowed brighter, and a faint smile played on their lips. "You will become one with the hollow, Eloan. You will forget your past, your old life. But you will carry its essence with you, and in doing so, you will protect the hollow for as long as it exists." A wave of dizziness swept over her, and Eloan swayed on her feet. She closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of her decision settle in. She had made her choice, but the truth of it was more overwhelming than she had anticipated. When she opened her eyes, the gatekeeper was gone. In their place was the garden Wisteria Hollow, as she remembered it, but more vibrant, more alive than ever before. The trees swayed in the wind, the flowers bloomed with renewed life, and the air smelled of fresh rain and earth. But this time, it was different. This time, she was its guardian. The blue book in her hands pulsed once more, and as Eloan looked down at it, she realized that the final message had appeared. The hollow remembers. And now, so do you. Her heart calmed, her mind clear for the first time since her arrival. She had made the choice, and she was ready. Eloan took one last look at the garden, the place that had become both her past and her future. She was no longer a visitor, no longer a child of the world outside. She was part of the hollow now, bound to it, as it was bound to her. And together, they would protect the balance for as long as it took. Act 11, The Keeper's Awakening. The ground beneath Eloan's feet felt different. No longer was it merely soft earth, now, it hummed with life, resonating with the power of the hollow itself. The air was thick with the scent of ancient trees, the kind of scent that spoke of age-old secrets buried deep beneath the surface. Every breeze, every rustle of the leaves seemed to carry with it the weight of centuries. She was no longer an outsider. The hollow had claimed her, and in return, she had become a part of it. Eloan could feel it in the very marrow of her bones, the energy that pulsed through the roots of the trees, the whispers in the wind, and the heartbeat of the garden itself. It was both comforting and unnerving. For the first time, she realized she wasn't simply walking through the hollow, she was walking with it. But despite the comfort that the hollow's energy gave her, there was a lingering sense of unease. Something still felt incomplete. The choice she had made had come with a heavy price, one she had yet to fully understand. The blue book pulsed again, its warmth seeping into her hands. Eloan glanced down, and the pages began to turn on their own, stopping at a passage she hadn't seen before. The keeper must learn to listen, for the hollow speaks to those who hear. Not all voices are clear. Some are meant to remain silent until the time is right. Eloan's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't sure what the message meant, but she knew that the hollow had more to reveal. And she had to be ready. She set out through the garden, her footsteps light on the moss-covered path. The trees whispered around her, their branches creaking like old bones, and the flowers bloomed in brilliant colors, their petals trembling as if in anticipation. The hollow was waking, and with it, the memories of those who had passed before her. As she walked deeper into the heart of the hollow, the air grew cooler, and the sunlight dimmed. The trees ahead parted to reveal a clearing, and in the center stood a tall, stone obelisk covered in ivy. The surface of the obelisk shimmered with an iridescent glow, as though it were alive, its energy vibrating with a subtle hum. Eloan approached cautiously, feeling the pull of the stone as if it were calling to her. She reached out a hand, and the moment her fingers brushed against the surface, the ground beneath her feet trembled. A voice echoed in her mind, ancient and familiar. The keeper must remember the pact made long ago. Eloan's breath caught in her throat. The voice sounded like her grandmother's, but it wasn't. It was deeper, more resonant, filled with the weight of time itself. The hollow is bound to you, as you are bound to it. The balance must be maintained. To break the cycle is to bring ruin upon all that you have sworn to protect. The words reverberated through her skull, and Eloan felt a wave of dizziness wash over her. She staggered back, her heart pounding, but the voice was still there, echoing in the recesses of her mind. The pact cannot be broken, Eloan. Not by you. Not by anyone. The world around her seemed to shift. The trees twisted and contorted, the ground cracking open, and the sky above her darkened, swirling with clouds. The hollow was alive in a way she hadn't fully understood until now. It was not simply a place, it was a force, a living entity, and its pulse was linked to her own. As the darkness swirled around her, Eloan closed her eyes, trying to steady her breath. When she opened them again, she was no longer in the clearing. She stood at the edge of a vast chasm, its depths shrouded in shadow. The sound of rushing water echoed from below, but the source was unseen. The The chasm stretched out endlessly, its edges disappearing into the darkness. From the other side of the chasm, a figure emerged tall and cloaked, its face obscured by shadow. Eloan could feel the weight of its presence, a force that seemed to draw the very light from the air. Eloan, the figure said, its voice deep and resonant. It was the gatekeeper. You have come far, the gatekeeper continued, its tone tinged with something like approval. But there is more to the hollow than you know. More than you can understand in this moment. The gatekeeper stepped closer, its form becoming clearer as it approached. The cloak it wore seemed to shimmer, shifting with an otherworldly light. Eloan's heart raced as the figure came closer, its presence overwhelming. You must choose, Eloan, the gatekeeper said, its eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. To keep the balance, to restore the hollow, you must give something up. But remember, the choice is yours alone. The chasm before her seemed to grow wider, its depths calling her to step forward. The gatekeeper's voice echoed again in her mind, a warning, a plea. Do not forget. The hollow does not forgive. And neither will you. Eloan looked down at the blue book in her hands. Its pages were turning once more, stopping on a final passage. The keeper must listen. And when the time comes, you must decide what you will sacrifice. The hollow's heart is heavy. And so must be your choice. Eloan stood frozen at the edge of the chasm, her mind racing. The weight of the decision, the responsibility, pressed heavily upon her. She knew that whatever choice she made would shape the future of the hollow and her own future as its keeper. And then, as if in answer to her thoughts, the ground beneath her feet trembled once more. The chasm before her shifted, revealing a glimmer of light, bright, warm, and inviting. It was the light of the garden, of the world she had once known. But it was fading, slipping away as the darkness encroached upon it. Her heart ached as she glanced back at the glowing passage, the warmth of the garden pulling at her. But ahead, beyond the chasm, lay the unknown, her future, and the future of the hollow. She stepped forward, her foot hovering over the edge of the chasm. The choice was hers. Act 12, the final choice. Eloan stood at the edge of the chasm, her heart pounding in her chest. The figure of the gatekeeper loomed before her, its form now clearly defined in the dim light that flickered around them. Its cloak shimmered with an ethereal glow, and its eyes, those eyes glowed faintly with the same light that filled the hollow, ancient and unfathomable. She could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on her like an invisible hand, urging her forward. The chasm before her seemed endless, the darkness below stretching down into infinity. The light on the other side, the warmth of the garden and the world she had once known, felt like a distant memory, a dream she could no longer reach. Do you understand the choice before you, Eloan? The gatekeeper's voice rumbled, deep and unwavering. Eloan took a deep breath, steadying herself. I understand that I have to choose. But what happens if I choose the wrong path? The gatekeeper tilted its head slightly, as if considering her question. There is no wrong path, only the path you choose. But every choice has a consequence. Eloan's grip tightened around the blue book. Its warmth had been a comfort to her, a reminder of the journey she had taken so far. But now, it felt heavy in her hands, as though it carried the weight of the entire hollow within it. "I've already sacrificed so much," Eloan said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've given up the life I knew. I've become part of this place, part of the hollow. But is it enough? Is the hollow safe now?" The gatekeeper stepped forward, its presence overwhelming. "The hollow is never truly safe. It is a place of balance, of light and dark, of memories and forgetting. To keep the balance, you must give yourself fully. The question is not whether you are ready to give up everything. It is whether you are willing to do so." Eloan swallowed hard. The weight of the decision loomed over her like a storm, dark and unyielding. She had already come so far, too far to turn back now. But the cost, the price she would have to pay to keep the balance, was something she wasn't sure she could bear. "The choice is not just about you, Eloan," the gatekeeper continued, its voice softening. "It is about the hollow, about the future of this land. You are the keeper, the guardian, but you are also the key. The hollow's heart beats in time with yours. If you choose to protect it, to keep the balance, you must accept the consequences. You must accept that you may never leave this place, that you may never return to the world you knew." The gatekeeper paused, its gaze fixed on Eloan. "But remember this, you will not be alone. The hollow will guide you, and you will guide it. The choice is yours to make." Eloan's heart ached with the weight of it all. She had been prepared for this moment, but no amount of preparation could ever truly ready her for the enormity of the decision. The garden, the memories, the family she had left behind, it was all tangled together, and now she had to choose which part of herself she would sacrifice. The book in her hands began to pulse again, its pages flipping on their own. She opened it, and the next passage appeared, its words clear and direct. "The keeper must become one with the hollow. The past must be sacrificed to protect the future. Choose wisely, Eloan, for what you choose will shape the future of all who come after you." Eloan closed the book slowly, the weight of the words sinking deep into her chest. The future of the hollow, the balance of light and dark, rested on her shoulders. She had been chosen, but now, she realized that the choice was not just about the hollow, it was about her. Her future. Her destiny. The gatekeeper's voice broke through her thoughts. "What will you choose, Eloan? Will you protect the hollow, or will you let it fade into darkness?" The wind around them began to pick up, the sound of rustling leaves filling the air. Eloan turned toward the light on the other side of the chasm, the distant glow of the garden calling to her. For a moment, she felt the pull of that warmth, the safety it promised. But then, as she looked back at the gatekeeper, she knew what she had to do. "I choose to protect the hollow," Eloan said, her voice steady and unwavering. I choose to be its keeper. The gatekeeper nodded slowly, its expression unreadable. So it shall be. The hollow's heart beats in time with yours. You have made your choice, and now, you must embrace it. As Eloan stepped forward, the chasm before her seemed to disappear, the darkness giving way to light. The ground beneath her feet was firm, solid. The hollow, the place that had once been a mystery, was now a part of her. She could feel its pulse within her, its energy flowing through her like a living thing. The gatekeeper stepped aside, allowing her to pass. As Eloan crossed the threshold, the world around her shifted once more. She was no longer in the temple, no longer in the chasm. She was back in the garden, the familiar sight of the wisteria trees and the stone pathways greeting her like an old friend. But this time, everything was different. The hollow was alive, breathing with her. The air was filled with a sense of peace, of balance. The garden, the forest, the entire land around her had come alive with light and energy. And Eloan, now the keeper, could feel it all, its heartbeat, its pulse, its very essence. As she stood there, surrounded by the beauty of the hollow, Eloan knew that her choice had been the right one. She had sacrificed her past, but in doing so, she had secured the future of the hollow. And as the first rays of dawn broke through the trees, Eloan smiled, knowing that she would protect this place for as long as it needed her. Act 13, The Keeper's Path. Eloan stood still, her heart still pounding from the weight of her decision. The hollow pulsed around her, the very air alive with energy, a quiet hum that seemed to echo from the earth itself. She had chosen to protect it, to guard its secrets and ensure its balance. But now that she had taken this step, she felt something new, something ancient begin to stir within her. The garden that had once been familiar to her now felt different. It wasn't just a place, it was a living, breathing entity. Each tree, each vine, each stone in the pathway seemed to carry its own story, its own memory. And Eloan, now bound to it, could sense the weight of those stories as if they had been etched into her very soul. As she walked through the garden, the world around her seemed to come alive. The wisteria vines swayed as if in greeting, their blossoms glowing softly in the dim light of the early morning. The sound of water trickling from a nearby stream filled the air, and the rustling of leaves was a constant, soothing melody. But beneath the serenity, Eloan could sense something else: attention, a disturbance in the balance. It wasn't just the hollow that was alive. Something else, something darker, was waking within the depths of this place. Eloan, a voice called softly, cutting through the stillness of the garden. She turned to see Isolde standing at the edge of the path, her face solemn. The older woman's eyes were filled with a mixture of pride and concern, her posture rigid, as if she had known this moment would come. Eloan had not seen her since she had made her choice, and now, the weight of her role as keeper felt more real than ever. Isolde, Eloan said, her voice shaky, unsure of what to say. I've made my choice. I'm the keeper now. But I don't know what comes next. Isolde smiled faintly, stepping closer. You've already begun, Eloan. The hollow will show you the way. But the journey is never as simple as it seems. The balance is delicate, and it is not just the hollow you must protect. There are forces at work here, forces that seek to disturb that balance. Eloan's heart skipped a beat. Forces? What do you mean? Isolde's gaze darkened. There are those who seek the hollow's power, Eloan. Not all are as kind-hearted as you. Some want to use its magic for their own ends, to twist it and break it. You must be vigilant. You must protect the hollow, but you must also be ready to face the shadows that lurk in its depths. Eloan's mind raced. She had known that the hollow was ancient and powerful, but the thought of others seeking to control it made her stomach turn. What had she signed up for? Was she truly ready for what lay ahead? But how? She asked, her voice trembling. How can I protect it? How can I fight these forces if I don't even understand them? Isolde stepped closer, placing a hand on her shoulder. You already have what you need, Eloan. The hollow chose you for a reason. It has given you the power to see things others cannot, to sense what lies hidden. You must trust in yourself and the bond you share with the hollow. The more you listen, the more you will understand. The words sank in slowly, settling in her chest. She had always been able to feel the subtle changes in the air, the way the trees whispered secrets, the way the ground trembled with ancient power. But now, with her new role, those sensations felt stronger, more intense. The hollow was alive within her, and she could feel its pulse, its heartbeat, deep within her own. I'll do whatever it takes, Eloan said finally, her voice steady, though the weight of the responsibility pressed heavily on her heart. I won't let the hollow fall. Isolde nodded, her face softening. I know you won't. But remember, Eloan, this journey will not be easy. You will face trials that will test you in ways you cannot imagine. The hollow will give you its strength, but you must also find your own. With those final words, Isolde turned and began to walk away, leaving Eloan standing in the garden, alone once more. But this time, the stillness felt different. The hollow was no longer a distant world, it was hers to protect, hers to guide. And with that thought, Eloan knew there was no turning back. As the days passed, Eloan began to feel the weight of her new role. The garden, the trees, the creatures that roamed its paths, all of it was now connected to her. She could sense their emotions, their thoughts, their pain, and joy. It was as though she had become a part of their world, and they, a part of hers. But with that connection came a deep responsibility. Eloan could no longer walk through the garden as she once had. She could no longer ignore the signs of imbalance that began to appear faint at first, but growing stronger each day. One evening, as the sun began to set and the garden was bathed in the soft glow of twilight, Eloan stood at the edge of the clearing, her eyes scanning the horizon. She had felt it again, the disturbance. Something was wrong, and she knew it was only a matter of time before it reached her. Then, as if to answer her thoughts, a figure appeared in the distance, a figure cloaked in shadow, moving swiftly through the garden. Eloan's heart skipped a beat. She knew instantly that this was no ordinary visitor. The figure approached, and as it came closer, Eloan could see that it was not human. Its eyes glowed faintly, its skin pale and smooth like marble, and its movement was eerily fluid, as though it were gliding across the ground. "Who are you?" Eloan demanded, her voice steady but filled with uncertainty. The figure stopped before her, its glowing eyes meeting hers. It did not speak, but instead, a strange sensation filled Eloan's mind, images, emotions, and thoughts that were not her own, rushing into her consciousness. The vision was overwhelming. She saw the hollow, but not as it was now. She saw it consumed by darkness, its power twisted and perverted by an unseen force. She saw the trees wither, the flowers die, and the creatures that once roamed the garden fall silent. And in the center of it all, she saw herself broken, her connection to the hollow severed, her heart empty. The vision faded as quickly as it had come, leaving Eloan breathless and shaken. The figure spoke then, its voice a soft whisper in the wind. "You are not the first, keeper. And you will not be the last." Act 14, The Shadow's Embrace. Eloan's mind raced as the vision of the shadowed figure faded into the mist. The message it had given her, cryptic and unsettling, lingered like an echo in her thoughts. "You are not the first, keeper. And you will not be the last." What did it mean? Who or what had spoken to her? The creature had not shown any signs of aggression, but its warning felt like a weight on her heart. A threat, perhaps, or a prophecy. She had chosen to be the keeper of Wisteria Hollow, but it was clear now that the Hollow was more than just a magical place. It was a battlefield, caught between forces of light and darkness, and Eloan had stepped into its most dangerous conflict. For a long moment, Eloan stood in the clearing, her eyes scanning the shadows. The garden around her seemed different now, darker, as though something had shifted beneath the surface. The whispers that had once been comforting now seemed to carry a sense of foreboding, like the distant hum of an approaching storm. She could feel it in the air, the same sensation she had felt when she first arrived in the hollow, only stronger now. It wasn't just the hollow that was alive. It was the land itself, and it was restless. Something was stirring beneath the surface, and Eloan could no longer ignore it. With a deep breath, she turned back toward the stone path, her eyes fixed on the distant edge of the garden. The hollow had given her a responsibility, a promise that she would protect it, that she would keep the balance. But the question was no longer if she could keep that balance. It was how. The air grew colder as she walked, and soon, the once familiar paths of the garden began to feel unfamiliar, even hostile. The trees that had once whispered their secrets to her now seemed to watch her, their branches twisting in unnatural directions. The flowers, which had always bloomed in vibrant colors, now appeared dull, their petals fading at the edges, as though they, too, were suffering from the imbalance she had yet to understand. She reached the edge of the garden, where the dense forest met the open field, and stopped. There, standing at the farthest edge of the garden, was a figure. It was tall, cloaked in shadow, and its face was obscured. But something in its presence sent a chill down her spine. This was not the same shadowed figure from before. This one was real, solid, and it was watching her. "Eloan," the figure spoke, its voice low and resonant, like a whisper carried on the wind. "The hollow belongs to you, now. But it does not belong to only you." The figure stepped closer, its form becoming clearer as it moved toward her. The cloak it wore was dark, almost blending into the night around them, and its eyes glowed faintly in the moonlight. Eloan felt the power of its presence before it even spoke again. "You've chosen, Keeper," the figure continued, its tone dripping with something ancient. "But remember, every choice comes with a price." Eloan stood tall, refusing to show any fear, though her heart pounded in her chest. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice steady despite the growing unease. The figure's lips curled into a smile, but it wasn't a smile of warmth. It was cold, calculating. "I am the one who keeps the other side of the balance. The one who watches as the hollow shifts, as the powers grow. The one who waits for the keeper to break." Eloan's eyes widened as the figure's words sank in. "What do you mean? What powers are you talking about?" The figure chuckled darkly. "You think the hollow belongs only to those who seek its protection? No. There are others, those who seek its power, its secrets. And they will stop at nothing to claim it for themselves." The air around them grew colder, the wind picking up as though the garden itself was reacting to the figure's words. The trees around them groaned as if stretching, reaching for something. "The hollow is old, Eloan," the figure continued, stepping closer, its eyes narrowing. "Older than you know. It has memories of a time before your world, before all worlds. And it is waking too slowly for some, too fast for others. But there is one thing you should know." Eloan's heart raced. "What?" The figure leaned in, its voice barely above a whisper. "The hollow is not just a place of balance. It is the key to something far greater and far darker. To protect it, you must be willing to give up more than just your past. You must give up your future, your very soul." Eloan recoiled, stepping back. "I've already made my choice. I won't let it fall." The figure's grin widened, its eyes glowing more brightly now. "We shall see. The hollow has already chosen you. But it is not done testing you. It's only just begun." With a swift motion, the figure raised its hand, and the ground beneath Eloan's feet cracked open. The earth trembled violently, and she barely had time to react before a surge of dark energy erupted from the fissure, sending her tumbling backward. The energy was cold, suffocating, like being plunged into an endless, freezing abyss. Eloan struggled to regain her footing, but the darkness pressed against her, pulling her deeper into the chasm that had opened beneath her. For a moment, everything around her was consumed by the shadows. The whispers, the wind, the very garden itself, it all faded into nothingness. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the darkness stopped. The energy lifted, and Eloan found herself standing in the clearing once more, breathless and disoriented. But the figure had vanished, leaving only the echo of its words behind. Eloan, it had said, the hollow is not done with you. And Eloan knew, deep in her heart, that it was true. The hollow had chosen her, but there was so much more she had yet to uncover. Dark forces were at play, forces that would stop at nothing to destroy what she had sworn to protect. She stood up, shaking off the lingering sense of dread, and began to walk back toward the center of the garden. The shadows had not won. Not yet. But they were coming. And she had to be ready. Act 15, The Heart of the Hollow. Eloan could feel the weight of the garden pressing down on her like an invisible force, its energy pulsing with a power she had yet to fully understand. Every step she took seemed to reverberate through the very ground beneath her feet, and the whispers, once soothing, now carried an undercurrent of urgency, of something deeper, darker, stirring. Beneath the surface of the hollow, she had barely regained her bearings after the encounter with the shadowed figure. Its cryptic warning echoed in her mind, growing louder with each passing moment. The hollow is not done with you. And though Eloan had sworn to protect it, she knew that her journey was far from over. If anything, it had just begun. The air around her thickened, and as she walked deeper into the garden, she felt the familiar tug of the hollow's pulse within her. She was no longer just a visitor here. She had become its keeper, bound to it in ways she could not fully comprehend. And yet, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, something was coming, something that would test everything she had learned so far. Her path led her to the heart of the garden, where the oldest and most sacred trees stood, giants with bark as black as midnight, their branches twisted and gnarled, reaching out like fingers toward the sky. These were the trees that had stood the test of time, the ones that held the oldest memories of the hollow. They whispered to her, their voices soft, yet filled with ancient knowledge. But today, their whispers were different. They were frantic, their branches trembling as if in fear. Eloan approached slowly, the unease in her chest growing with every step. As she neared the center of the grove, a figure appeared before her. This one was not cloaked in shadow, but wrapped in light, a woman, tall and radiant, her long hair flowing like strands of silver. Her eyes, however, were dark, black as the night, and they seemed to pierce through Eloan's very soul. Eloan, the woman said, her voice soft, yet powerful, like the calm before a storm. You have come far, but there are still trials ahead. Eloan stepped back, her hand instinctively reaching for the blue book. Who are you? She asked, her voice steady despite the growing tension in her chest. I am the heart of the hollow, the woman replied. I am its spirit, its essence. And I have been waiting for you. The words sent a chill through Eloan's spine. The heart of the hollow. She repeated, her mind racing. But what do you want from me? What is it that I must do? The woman's gaze softened. You are its keeper now. You are bound to the hollow, just as I am. But the balance is delicate, Eloan. There are forces at play, forces that seek to disrupt the harmony of this place. Eloan nodded slowly, her heart pounding in her chest. The shadowed figure. It warned me. It said I was not the only one who sought the hollow's power. Who are these forces? The woman's eyes darkened, and a shadow passed over her face. There are those who wish to corrupt the hollow's magic, to use it for their own purposes. They will stop at nothing to seize control of its power. And you, Eloan, are the only one who can stop them. Eloan felt a surge of determination rise within her. I will stop them. I've chosen to protect the hollow. I won't let anyone destroy it. The heart of the hollow stepped closer, her presence overwhelming. You will need more than resolve, Eloan. You will need strength, wisdom, and the ability to listen to the hollow's call. It will guide you, but you must be ready to face the darkness that lies ahead. Eloan nodded again, the weight of her role settling in her chest. The hollow had given her its power, but with that power came responsibility. She couldn't turn away from it now. I'm ready, she said, her voice firm. I will face whatever comes. The heart of the hollow smiled softly, though there was a trace of sadness in her eyes. Then, the path is set. With a sudden motion, the woman reached out and touched Eloan's forehead. A flash of light filled her vision, and for a moment, she was blinded by its intensity. When the light faded, Eloan found herself standing in a new place, a dark, cavernous space, filled with shadows and echoes. At the center of the cavern stood a stone altar, surrounded by flickering candles. The air was thick with an unsettling energy, and Eloan felt a deep chill crawl down her spine. This place, she realized, was not part of the hollow she knew. This was something else, something ancient, something lost. Welcome to the Vale, the heart of the hollow's voice echoed from the shadows. This is where the hollow's power is held, its core. And here, you must face the greatest trial of all. Eloan's heart raced. What trial? She demanded. The heart's voice whispered in her mind. You must confront the darkness within you, the part of yourself that you have yet to understand. Only by facing it can you truly protect the hollow and restore the balance. The ground beneath Eloan's feet trembled as the shadows began to shift. Figures moved within the darkness, their forms indistinct, but their presence undeniable. A cold, unsettling laughter echoed from the shadows, sending a shiver down Eloan's spine. You must face your fear, Eloan, the heart's voice continued. Only then will you be able to wield the power of the hollow to its fullest. Eloan took a deep breath, her mind racing. She had chosen this path, and now there was no turning back. Whatever the trial was, whatever the darkness that waited for her in the veil, she would face it. She had no choice. With a steady hand, she stepped forward into the darkness, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. Act 16, The Darkness Within. Eloan stepped deeper into the veil, the darkness pressing in on all sides, but she felt an unshakable determination stir within her. She was the keeper now, and there was no turning back. The hollow had chosen her, and despite the darkness that surrounded her, she knew that she was the only one who could protect it. The air in the veil was thick, dense with an energy she couldn't fully comprehend. It felt like the weight of 1,000 years of secrets, of memories long buried, all pressing down on her at once. As she moved forward, the shadows seemed to stretch and twist, forming shapes that were both familiar and foreign. Faces she didn't recognize flickered in and out of view, their eyes watching her with an intensity that sent a chill through her bones. She walked on, her footsteps the only sound in the oppressive silence, until she reached the center of the cavern. At the heart of the veil stood a large stone pedestal, its surface etched with intricate symbols she couldn't understand. Above it, a faint, eerie glow illuminated the chamber, casting strange shadows that danced on the walls. Eloan, a voice echoed from the shadows. She froze, her breath catching in her throat. The voice was soft, almost soothing, yet there was something about it that filled her with dread. She turned slowly, searching for the source of the voice. From the darkness stepped a figure tall, cloaked in shadow, with features obscured by a hood. It was the same figure from her vision earlier, the one that had warned her about the forces seeking the hollow's power. The figure stepped closer, its presence heavy, like a storm cloud on the horizon. "You've come far, Eloan," the figure said, its voice a low murmur. "But the trials are not over. The darkness within you has yet to be faced." Eloan took a step back, her hand instinctively reaching for the blue book at her side. "I've faced the darkness," she said, her voice steady, though her heart raced. "I've chosen to protect the hollow. I won't let it fall." The figure's laugh was soft, mocking. "You think that's all? You think simply choosing to protect the hollow will make you strong enough to face what is coming?" Eloan's pulse quickened. "What's coming? What do you want from me?" The figure's eyes glowed faintly in the darkness, and for a moment, Eloan thought she saw something shift within them, a flicker of recognition, of knowing. "I am the darkness that has always been here, Eloan. The shadow that haunts the hollow's heart. And you are its keeper, its light. But light can only exist because there is darkness. Without one, the other cannot survive." The words chilled her. The figure was right in a way. There could be no light without dark, no balance without both. But Eloan wasn't sure she was ready to accept the dark side of her role. "You're asking me to embrace the darkness," Eloan said, her voice trembling despite her resolve. "But I won't." "You don't have a choice," the figure interrupted, stepping closer still. "The Hollow's power is vast, Eloan. But with that power comes a cost. You cannot protect the Hollow without understanding the darkness within it and within yourself. You are not just a keeper. You are its conduit. You are the one who holds the balance between light and dark. And unless you accept the darkness, unless you confront it and make it your own, you will fail." The figure raised its hand, and the ground beneath Eloan trembled. The pedestal in front of her began to glow brighter, the symbols carved into its surface shifting, changing, as though they were alive. "This is your trial, Eloan," the figure said, its voice growing colder, more insistent. "To become the keeper, you must face your own darkness. You must confront the parts of yourself that you have locked away, your fears, your regrets, your deepest desires. Only then will you truly understand the Hollow's power, and only then will you be able to protect it." The ground shook violently, and Eloan stumbled back. The shadows around her seemed to grow darker, more oppressive, their voices rising in a chorus of whispers, taunting, beckoning. Images flashed before her eyes, images of herself, broken, lost, consumed by the very darkness the figure spoke of. She saw herself standing at the edge of the garden, the path stretching out before her. But this time, it wasn't the beautiful, tranquil garden she knew. It was a twisted version of it, filled with dead trees and withered flowers. She saw herself walking alone, her steps heavy, her heart empty. She saw the people she had loved, her family, her friends, turned away from her, their faces filled with disappointment and fear. The darkness was inside her, she realized. It had always been inside her. She fell to her knees, the weight of the vision pressing down on her. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "I can't be like this. I can't become part of the darkness." The figure stood over her, its voice a low, soothing murmur. "You already are, Eloan. We all are. The question is not whether you can accept the darkness, but whether you can control it. The Hollow has chosen you because it sees the balance within you. You are both light and dark. You must become both, or you will destroy what you seek to protect." Eloan closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the choice pressing down on her. The shadows, the darkness, it all felt so real. But she couldn't give in to it. She couldn't let the Hollow become like the vision she had seen, twisted, broken, consumed by darkness. With a cry of defiance, she stood up, her hands gripping the blue book tightly. The shadows seemed to pull at her, trying to drag her back down, but she refused to yield. She had made her choice. She would protect the Hollow, not just its light, but its dark side too. She would learn to control both, to understand both, because only then could she truly restore balance. The figure before her stepped back, its eyes narrowing. "Very well, Eloan," it said, its voice softening. "The Hollow is yours to protect. but know this darkness will always be with you. You must learn to live with it. And when the time comes, when the darkness comes for you, you must stand firm." With that, the figure vanished, leaving Eloan standing alone in the heart of the vale. She was breathing heavily, her body trembling with exhaustion, but she knew she had made her choice. She would protect the hollow, not just the light, but the darkness as well. The hollow was a part of her now, and she would embrace every part of it. Act 17, The Guardian's Resolve. The days after Eloan's confrontation with the darkness in the vale passed in a blur. The hollow around her had shifted in subtle, almost imperceptible ways. Trees swayed differently in the wind, the waters in the stream flowed with a new rhythm, and the whispers in the leaves seemed quieter, as though waiting for her next step. Eloan had chosen. She had chosen to accept the darkness as part of herself, just as she had chosen to protect the hollow. But that acceptance had come at a cost. She could feel it, that lingering weight in her chest, the constant tug of the shadows that were now forever intertwined with her soul. She spent the following days walking through the garden, learning to really listen to the hollow's subtle cues. The trees, once merely symbols of beauty and life, now spoke to her of ancient secrets. The ground beneath her feet was no longer simply soil, it was alive, filled with the weight of memories that stretched back millennia. And in the stillness of those quiet days, Eloan began to understand the deeper purpose of her role. She wasn't just a protector. She was the link between light and dark, between past and future. She was the one who would guide the hollow through the coming storm no matter what it cost her. One evening, as the sky above the hollow turned a brilliant shade of purple, Eloan found herself standing at the edge of the garden, gazing out at the horizon. She had felt it, the disturbance, the pulse of something unnatural that had begun to ripple through the land. The hollow was not just a place, it was a force. And that force was beginning to change. As she stood there, the wind carrying the scent of rain, she heard a soft voice behind her. "Eloan." She turned, her heart skipping a beat. There, standing at the edge of the clearing, was Isolde, her face shadowed by the trees. "Isolde," Eloan said, surprised to see her. It had been days since they last spoke. "What's wrong?" Isolde's eyes were filled with concern as she stepped closer. "There are rumors," she said quietly. "The hollow is changing, Eloan. And not for the better." Eloan frowned. "What do you mean?" "I've been trying to protect it, to understand it. But something feels off. I can feel it in the air. Something's coming." Isolde nodded solemnly. "The balance is fragile. Too fragile. There are forces beyond the hollow, forces that seek to tear it apart. And they're growing stronger." Eloan's pulse quickened. "Who are these forces? What do they want?" "I don't know," Isolde admitted, her voice heavy with worry. "But I do know one thing. They've been watching. And now, it's time for them to act. Eloan felt the weight of those words settle into her bones. She had known, deep down, that her time as keeper would not be easy. But she hadn't expected it to be like this, not this soon. What do we do? Eloan asked, her voice barely a whisper. Isolde stepped forward, her eyes intense. We fight. We protect the hollow, Eloan. We stand together. But how? Eloan asked, the weight of uncertainty pressing against her chest. I'm still learning. I don't even know how to use the power I've been given. How can I fight something I can't even understand? Isolde reached out and placed a hand on Eloan's shoulder. You don't have to do it alone. You have the hollow's power, yes, but you also have the strength of those who came before you. The hollow is not just a place, Eloan. It is a community. And you are part of that community now. Eloan's heart swelled with a strange sense of hope. She wasn't alone. She had the hollow, its power, its memories, its life. And now, she had Isolde, someone who had walked this path before her, someone who understood the hollow's deeper mysteries. We need to find the source of this disturbance, Eloan said, her voice steadying. We need to stop it before it's too late. Isolde nodded, her expression grave. We will. But you must be prepared, Eloan. The path ahead will not be easy. The darkness you face will not be just from without, it will come from within as well. Eloan took a deep breath, the weight of her role as keeper settling over her. I'm ready. I have to be. Isolde stepped back, her eyes softening. Then let's go. The hollow is calling. And it's time to answer. The following days were filled with preparation. Eloan and Isolde ventured deep into the hollow, following the subtle signs that pointed them toward the source of the disturbance. They traveled through parts of the garden Eloan had never seen before, places where the trees grew twisted, where the flowers wilted, and the air was thick with the scent of decay. But it wasn't just the physical signs of imbalance that Eloan noticed. The hollow itself seemed to be reacting to something. The very fabric of the land was changing, warping, as though it were under siege. At the edge of the forest, they found the first true sign of the disturbance, a massive rift in the earth, a jagged scar that ran deep into the soil. From within the rift, a dark energy pulsed, its glow faint but undeniable. This is it, Isolde said, her voice filled with awe and dread. This is the heart of the corruption. Eloan stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the rift. The darkness that emanated from it felt cold, like the very essence of death itself. It was pulling at the hollow, trying to consume it from within. This is the force that's been growing, Eloan whispered. But why? Why now? Isolde glanced at her. The hollow's power has always been strong. But it's not the only power in this world. There are those who seek to control it, those who would use its magic to bend the world to their will. And we're the only ones who can stop them, Eloin said, her voice steady, filled with a renewed sense of purpose. We have to protect it. We have to protect the hollow. Isolde nodded. We will. But we must act quickly. This corruption is spreading, and if we don't stop it now, the hollow could fall. And everything that depends on it, everything you've sworn to protect, will be lost. Eloin turned to face the rift once more, her heart filled with a deep, unwavering resolve. She was the keeper. She had chosen this path. And she would protect the hollow, no matter the cost. With one final breath, she stepped forward, into the darkness. Act 18, The Battle for the Hollow. Eloin stood at the edge of the rift, her heart pounding in her chest. The darkness before her seemed to pulse with malevolent energy, a cold void that threatened to swallow everything in its path. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and the ground beneath her feet trembled with the weight of something ancient, something powerful. Beside her, Isolde stood silent, her eyes narrowed as she surveyed the scene. The rift before them had grown wider, its edges jagged and broken. From within, the dark energy pulsed, sending ripples through the air, like the slow, steady beat of a monstrous heart. This is it, Eloin said quietly, her voice almost drowned by the intensity of the moment. This is the source of the corruption. The hollow's heart is being consumed by this darkness. Isolde nodded gravely. The hollow has always been a place of balance, Eloin. But that balance is tipping. We must act now, before it's too late. Eloin felt the weight of the responsibility on her shoulders. She had chosen this path, chosen to protect the hollow, but nothing had prepared her for the magnitude of what she was about to face. The rift was not just a tear in the land, it was a tear in the very fabric of the hollow, a wound that threatened to spread and consume everything in its wake. Whatever happens, we cannot let this darkness take root, Eloin said, her eyes fixed on the rift. I won't let the hollow fall. Isolde placed a hand on her shoulder, her voice firm. You are the keeper now, Eloin. The hollow is bound to you, and you are bound to it. You must face this darkness, not as an outsider, but as its heart, its guardian. Only then can you restore the balance. With a deep breath, Eloin nodded. She felt the pulse of the hollow within her, the power of the land and its memories flowing through her veins. It was a power she had come to understand, and now, she would use it to protect everything she had sworn to safeguard. Stepping forward, she raised her hands toward the rift. The book at her side pulsed with energy, its pages fluttering as if it, too, were ready for the battle ahead. She could feel the hollow's power answering her call, the trees swaying gently, the air thickening with magic. The rift before her began to tremble, its edges crackling with dark energy. A low growl echoed from within, and a figure emerged shadowy and indistinct, its form flickering between human and monstrous. The air around it shimmered with an unnatural heat, and its eyes glowed with an eerie, violet light. "You are too late, Keeper," the figure rasped, its voice a low growl that vibrated through the air. "The hollow is mine now. You cannot protect what has already been claimed." Eloin stood tall, refusing to show any fear. "I will not let you take the hollow. It's not yours to claim." The figure's laugh was cold, hollow. "You are a fool. The hollow has no master, no keeper. It is a force, a power greater than you can ever comprehend. You think you can control it? You think you can protect it?" With a sudden movement, the figure raised its hand, and dark tendrils of energy shot out, snaking toward Eloin. The air grew cold as the darkness closed in around her, but Eloin stood firm, raising her own hands to counter the attack. The hollow's power surged within her, and she pushed back with all her strength, creating a barrier of light that held the darkness at bay. "You cannot stop me," the figure hissed. "The hollow is mine to command. The balance you so desperately cling to is nothing more than a dream. The world belongs to those who seize it." Eloin's heart thundered in her chest, but she refused to back down. "The hollow belongs to no one but itself. And I will protect it." With that, she summoned the full force of the hollow's power, reaching deep within herself and calling upon the ancient magic that flowed through the land. The book at her side crackled with energy, its pages turning wildly as the wind picked up, carrying with it the voices of the hollow's past guardians. The dark figure recoiled, its form flickering as the light of Eloin's magic pushed back against it. The air crackled with energy as Eloin focused all her strength on the rift, her mind and heart aligned with the hollow's pulse. "You are nothing," she whispered, her voice filled with determination. "The hollow is not yours to command." With a final, deafening burst of light, Eloin released the full force of her power. The rift before her trembled violently, and with a burst of energy, the darkness was torn from the earth. The shadowy figure screamed as it was consumed by the light, its form disintegrating into nothingness. The rift closed with a deafening crack, and the darkness that had once consumed the hollow slowly began to dissipate. Eloin stood panting, her hands still raised, her heart racing as the air began to calm. The hollow's energy pulsed through her, but it was no longer threatening, it was steady, grounding her. The garden around her seemed to sigh in relief, the trees swaying gently as the flowers bloomed once more. The whispers, once frantic, had softened, their voices no longer filled with fear. The hollow had been restored, its balance returned. Isolde stepped forward, her eyes filled with pride. "You did it, Eloin. You saved the hollow." Eloin smiled, exhaustion settling over her, but her heart was light. "It was never just me. It was the hollow. I'm just its keeper." Isolde nodded. "You've proven yourself, Eloin. You've faced the darkness, and you've restored the balance. The hollow is in safe hands." Eloin looked around the garden, the peaceful scene before her a stark contrast to the chaos they had just endured. The hollow was more than just a place, it was alive, and she was its heart. And now, more than ever, she knew she was ready to protect it. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the garden, Eloan stood tall, her heart filled with both peace and purpose. She had chosen to be the keeper, and now, she had proven that she was ready for the responsibility. The hollow was safe for now. And as its keeper, she would stand watch, ready to defend it from any force that sought to destroy it. Act 19, The Awakening of the Hollow. The garden was calm once more, its vibrant hues shimmering in the soft light of dawn. The air had a freshness to it, and the quiet hum of life that had once felt so distant now seemed to echo with a newfound sense of peace. Eloan stood in the heart of the garden, her eyes scanning the horizon, the weight of the battle still fresh on her mind. She had done it. The darkness had been repelled, the rift closed, and for a moment, the hollow seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. But deep within, Eloan could still feel the unease, the lingering sense that something was amiss. The whispers of the trees were no longer frantic, but they were still constant, like the rustle of leaves in a distant breeze. And the book at her side pulsed quietly, as though it, too, was waiting for something, waiting for her next move. Eloan. The soft voice broke through her thoughts, and she turned to find Isolde approaching, her face filled with a quiet sense of resolve. There was something different about her, a change in the air around her that Eloan couldn't quite place. "What's wrong?" Eloan asked, her voice laced with concern. The calm had been too fleeting. She could feel it in her bones. Isolde stepped closer, her gaze focused on the distant trees. "There's something you need to know. Something I should have told you long ago." Eloan's heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" Isolde took a deep breath before meeting her gaze, her expression serious. "The hollow has always been a place of balance, yes. But it is also a place of deep, ancient power. The reason the forces of darkness sought to corrupt it was not just to control its magic. They wanted to awaken something. Someone." Eloan frowned, not fully understanding. "Someone? Who?" "The hollow is more than a sanctuary for nature," Isolde continued, her voice steady but filled with a quiet urgency. "It is the birthplace of the keepers. You've felt the power within you, haven't you? The connection to the land, the knowledge that comes when you listen closely enough. It's more than just magic. The hollow has a will of its own, and it chose you. But you are not the first keeper, Eloan." Eloan's mind raced as she processed the words. "Not the first keeper? What do you mean?" "The hollow's power runs deeper than you realize. It was never meant to remain in a state of stasis. It has always been evolving, growing, waiting for the right moment to awaken its true strength." Isolde's voice dropped to a whisper. "And you, Eloan, are the key. the keeper who was destined to awaken that power. Eloan stepped back, her mind spinning. But I don't understand. I thought I was just protecting it. I thought I was chosen because I was the keeper. Isolde shook her head. You were chosen, yes. But the Hollow doesn't just choose a keeper for its protection, it chooses someone who can evolve with it, someone who can awaken its deepest potential. You're the bridge between its past and future, Eloan. The keeper who can truly unlock the Hollow's full power. Eloan's mind spun as the implications of Isolde's words began to sink in. She was more than just a protector. She was the awakener of the Hollow's power. A realization, both thrilling and terrifying, began to settle over her. So, what happens now? Eloan asked, her voice shaking slightly. What do I need to do? Isolde's gaze softened, and she stepped closer, placing a hand on Eloan's shoulder. You need to understand, Eloan. The Hollow's true power lies within its core, and it will never be fully restored until that core is awakened. You have already proven yourself as its keeper. But now, you must choose whether to embrace the full extent of its power or whether to leave it dormant, bound to its old, fragile state. Eloan's breath caught in her throat. And if I choose to awaken it? If you choose to awaken the Hollow's full power, there is no turning back, Isolde said gravely. The Hollow will become something greater, but it will also become more dangerous. The forces of darkness that sought to corrupt it will stop at nothing to seize control of that power. It will not be a battle of magic alone. It will be a battle for the very essence of the Hollow itself. Eloan's heart raced, but she knew that there was no turning back. She had already chosen to be its keeper. And now, the Hollow's future, its very existence, depended on her choices. Isolde, Eloan said, her voice steady but filled with determination, I've already made my choice. I will awaken the Hollow. I will protect it, no matter what the cost. Isolde smiled faintly. I knew you would. With a deep breath, Eloan reached for the book at her side. She could feel the weight of it, the pulse of power that flowed through its pages. It was time to unlock what had been dormant for so long. As she opened the book, the pages flipped on their own, stopping at a passage that seemed to glow with an otherworldly light. To awaken the Hollow, the keeper must release the heart of the land. Only then will the full power of the Hollow be revealed. But be warned, the heart is not just a source of power. It is the land's soul, and it will demand a sacrifice. Eloan's hand shook as she read the words, the weight of their meaning sinking in. The heart of the Hollow, the land's soul. It was more than just a power to be unlocked. It was a living, breathing entity that had existed since the beginning of time. What do I have to do? Eloan asked, her voice filled with resolve. Isolde's gaze met hers, filled with both pride and sorrow. You must go to the heart of the Hollow, the place where the land's power originates. It is there that you will unlock its full potential. But remember, Eloan the Hollow's heart will demand a sacrifice. You must be prepared to give up something important. Your past, your future, your very self. It will ask for a price. Eloan nodded, the weight of the decision settling in her chest. She had already given so much of herself to the Hollow. And now, she would give even more. She was its keeper and she would awaken its power, no matter the cost. With one last look at Isolde, Eloan turned and made her way toward the heart of the Hollow, ready to face the ultimate test of her resolve. Act 20, The Final Sacrifice. Eloan walked with steady steps, her heart heavy with the weight of her decision. The path to the heart of the Hollow was unlike anything she had encountered before. The trees here were ancient, their branches reaching out like bony fingers, their leaves whispering in languages that Eloan could barely understand. The air was thick with power, and every breath she took felt as though it were infused with the very essence of the land. She had come so far, faced so many trials, but this was the ultimate test, the test of her true resolve as keeper. The Hollow had chosen her, and she had chosen to protect it. But now, the Hollow's heart would demand its price. The heart of the Hollow was a place Eloan had heard whispered about, but never truly understood. It was said to be the source of all the magic that flowed through the land, the core of the Hollow's being, where the power of life itself pulsed like the beat of a heart. And now, she stood on the threshold of that place, knowing that once she crossed it, there would be no turning back. As she approached the center of the grove, a strange light filled the air, illuminating the stone circle before her. At the heart of the circle stood an ancient tree, its trunk thick and twisted, its roots stretching deep into the earth. The tree was unlike any other she had seen in the Hollow. Its bark was silver, and its leaves shimmered with a faint, otherworldly glow. It was the heart of the Hollow, its power emanating from every branch, every root. Eloan took a deep breath, steadying herself. She could feel the power of the tree calling to her, beckoning her forward. The Hollow's magic surged within her, and for the first time, she felt a deep connection to the land, to its heartbeat, to its soul. As she stepped forward, the air around her grew thick, the energy of the heart enveloping her like a cloak. The tree's roots seemed to rise from the ground, wrapping around her legs, pulling her toward its trunk. She looked up, and for the first time, she saw the true depth of the tree's power, a glowing core at its center, pulsing with light. "This is it," Eloan whispered to herself, her heart racing. She knew that once she touched the heart, everything would change. But then, she felt something stir within her, something dark, something ancient. The whispers in the air grew louder, more insistent, as though the Hollow itself were warning her. She could feel the presence of the darkness that had once tried to consume the land, still lingering in the depths of the Hollow, waiting for its chance to rise again. The blue book at her side began to pulse, its pages flickering as though reacting to the energy around them. Eloan opened it, and the pages turned to a new passage, one she hadn't seen before. The heart is both the land's soul and its curse. To awaken it fully, the keeper must give up the one thing that binds them to their past. Only then will the Hollow be free from the darkness. Eloan's breath caught in her throat. The price was clear now. To awaken the hollow's true power, she would have to give up something precious, something she had carried with her since the beginning of her journey. She had already given so much, but could she truly give up the one thing that had kept her grounded, the one thing that had given her hope, the memory of her family, the life she had once known? Could she let go of the past to secure the future of the hollow? The tree before her seemed to respond, its branches reaching out, as though offering a choice. The darkness in the hollow stirred again, and Eloan could feel its pull urging her to embrace it, to let it consume her and take control. It would be easier, she knew. The darkness would promise power, control. But at what cost? With a deep breath, Eloan closed her eyes. She had already chosen once before, and she would choose again. The hollow had chosen her because it needed her strength, her heart. She couldn't let it fall into the hands of darkness, no matter the price. "I choose the hollow," she whispered, her voice filled with resolve. "I will protect it, even if it means giving up everything." As soon as the words left her lips, the tree's energy surged forward, wrapping around her like a cocoon of light. The darkness, once threatening to consume her, recoiled in fear as the hollow's power began to rise, its true potential awakening. Eloan felt herself being pulled into the heart, her body merging with the energy of the land. She could feel the memories of the hollow, the ancient guardians, the creatures of the forest, the long-forgotten tales flooding her mind. The power of the land flowed through her veins, filling her with a deep sense of purpose. For a moment, she thought she might lose herself in the flood of energy. But then, she felt something else, a presence, gentle but strong. It was the presence of her family, of the life she had left behind. It was as though they were with her, guiding her, giving her the strength to let go. With a final surge of energy, Eloan embraced the heart fully, releasing her past into the light. The darkness, once creeping at the edges of the hollow, was banished, consumed by the light of the heart. The ground beneath her feet trembled as the hollow's power surged into its true form. The trees, the earth, the air, all of it was alive with energy, with magic, with the pulse of life. When the light finally faded, Eloan stood alone in the center of the grove, her heart racing but filled with peace. The hollow was whole again. It was no longer a place of darkness, no longer a place of corruption. It was a place of balance, of harmony, and of life. The blue book in her hands pulsed once more, its pages now still. Eloan knew that her journey as keeper had only just begun. She had faced the darkness, and she had emerged victorious. But she also knew that there would always be challenges ahead, always forces that sought to disrupt the balance. But for now, the hollow was safe. And that was enough. With a final glance at the heart, Eloan turned and walked back toward the garden. The hollow was her home now, and she would protect it forever.